Hi all, I thought we could have another wonderful aesthetic experience looking at Magnus Carlsen back in 2006, his fantastic sacrificial play in particular. In 2006 he had qualified for a place in the Corus B group due to his first place in the Corus C group in 2004. His shared first place with Alexander Motliev with 9 out of 13 qualified him to play in the Corus Group A in 2007. At the traditional international Bosna tournament in Sarajevo 2006, Carlsen shared first place with Nispenu, who won on tiebreak evaluation, and Vladimir Malakov. This could be regarded as Carlsen's first A elite tournament win, although it was not a clear first. Carlsen was close to winning the 2006 Norwegian Chess Championship outright, but a last round loss to Berg Ostenstedt dropped him into another tie with Ashstein. It prevented Carlsen from beating Ashstein's record as the youngest Norwegian champion ever. Nevertheless, in the playoff held 19th to 21st of September 2006, Carlsen won 3-1 after 2 draws at standard time controls. Carlsen won both rapid games in round 2, securing his first Norwegian championship win. Carlsen also won the Litnir Blitz tournament in Iceland. He achieved a 2-0 win over Vishy Anand in the semi-finals. That's quite topical, because 3 hours later from this video, which has been recorded now, is the rematch actually for the World Chess Championship 2014 against Vishy Anand. So yes, he had already experienced some wins in 2006 against Vishy at the Blitz tournament. He achieved the same result in the finals. He scored 6 out of 8 in the 37th Olympiad and achieved a performance rating of 28-20. That's pretty staggering for a 16-year-old, about 16 at this stage. In the Midnight Sun chess tournament, Carlsen finished second behind Sergei Shipov. In the Biel Grandmaster tournament, he placed second, beating the tournament winner Alexander Morozevich twice. In the NH chess tournament held in Amsterdam in August, Carlsen participated in the Experience vs Rising Stars Scheveningen team match. The Rising Stars won the match 28-22, with Carlsen achieving the best individual score for the Rising Stars team, 6.5 out of 10, with a 2700 performance rating, thus winning the right to participate in the 2007 Melody Amber tournament. With a score of 7.5 out of 15, Carlsen placed 8 out of 16 at the World Blitz Championship in Rishon LeZion, Israel. In the Rapid tournament, Rencontres National de Internationals de Chex at Cap d'Agde, France, he achieved reaching the semi-final, losing there to Karyakin. In November, Carlsen achieved 8th place out of 10 participants in the Mikhail Tal Memorial in Moscow with 2 losses and 7 draws. He finished 9th in a group of 18 participants in the Associated Blitz tournament, which was won by Anand. So on to Magnus Carlsen's sacrificial play in 2006. This first game against Yannick Pelletier. So Yannick Pelletier playing white. Magnus played this move knight d7, which seems to imply a weakness of the last move. Magnus is no longer covering, in particular it seems, b7, which seems to be an exploitable square now, and actually creating a pin against the knight. We'll put on a kibitzer throughout this to engine check things. Okay, the engine actually flickered with queen b7, but then changed its mind. So let's see. Queen b7 was played. Has Magnus set something really horrible here? It looks as though the queen might be lacking mobility, especially if it took on a7. In this position, Magnus actually is tempting the queen to take on a7 now. He actually plays queen f8, and this basically unpins the knight. So immediately black is now threatening knight c5 because the knight's unpinned, which would fork the queen and b3, and that would in turn weaken c4. So is white now committed to taking on a7? Well, the best move apparently is to play knight e4, and actually black is actually better here on knight e4 with d5 apparently. C takes, queen b4, hitting the knight and hitting e1. So had Magnus seen these really cunning super tactics, this gets to be a very complicated position indeed, with white, the engine recommending a rook sacrifice. This is absolutely crazy stuff. But here, apparently, black will be doing better in this rook sacrifice line. Extremely crazy stuff could have entailed. But in the game, it's a different continuation after this queen f8. His opponent took on a7. And now we see knight c5, which, okay, threatens to win the exchange and also hits b3. The rook now moves back. And here, the queen, which is lacking a mobility, is like a weakness of the pieces. And Magnus addresses this weakness of the pieces, you know, a nearly trapped piece, with this move which really seals the lock on the queen. He actually plays rook c6. And white is now threatening, sorry, black is now threatening to just simply win the queen with rook a8. What can actually white do against this? It seems Magnus has set an extremely cunning trap to win this poor queen. White now just played a5, just accepting the loss of the queen. Rook a8, a takes, and the game continued. Takes, takes. Is this a dangerous pawn? Queen a8, rook a1, knight takes b3, rook a4, and now Magnus continues knight d2, hitting c4 twice, knight b5, knight takes c4, rook b1. It looks a little bit dangerous though for this pawn. The king gets out of the way of potential back row issues with king h7. So in this position there seems to be no way to evict the queen, to try and queen this pawn. In fact, after f3, d5, white actually resigned here. Black is clearly better and is going to play a move like rook b6, pardon me, rook b6. And it's not very good for white after that. Just to show the extermination of this pawn, let's give white a move here. Let's say knight d4, rook c8, let's follow this line. I think black will eventually be able to untangle. Knight e5, and it looks as though then let's see here, knight d7, rook c4, this kind of thing. White's going to be untangling. The knight controls the b8 square, and then e5, and then if white's pieces get repulsed, if knight c6, well, we can just take on c6 there. So white's pieces will be eventually repulsed, and then we'll end up with a situation like this. The pawn is starting to be wrapped up, or black can push with d4 and get a vicious attack just in time. There'll be no time to defend the king here. So this kind of scenario can happen. So yeah, there was a little bit of potential there, but it's going to be shut down with black having, if nothing else, a winning like king attack to play for. So a very interesting game continuation, I thought, there, where Magnus is like playing this move which seems to carry with it a weakness of the last move, and it's like a deeply concealed trap, and he has done this kind of weakness of the last move as a trap in many games subsequently. It's a very, very interesting, you know, tactical concept, as though there's something to exploit here. But the knight is actually naturally going for c5, which is a weak point in white's position in any case. So it's what black really wants to do anyway, get a knight to c5 here. Okay, let's go on to another example. Magnus playing black here against Katerina Lano at 2500. Magnus is 2625 by this stage. White here played the move f3, and Magnus really wants to get rid of this knight, and he does so sacrificially. He just plays g6, offering h6. The king comes to g7, and it looks as though g5 has white just won a pawn. Well, there's big compensation here, knight h7. So immediately threatening knight takes or queen takes. White supports it. But now, can you guess? Knight takes g5. Yes, the king has been targeted here. So hg, queen takes g5, queen g2. Magnus has got his piece back, got rid of that pesky knight. and is now looking forward to maybe slaughtering white like this, bringing all the attacking pieces in. Knight d3, g5, and it looks as though g4 will be very handy with rook g6 to back it up. White plays knight takes f4. That seems to be on with the pin. Why not? Well, here Magnus played actually bishop c7, believe it or not. So he's offering even the e6 rook with check. What is going on here, you might ask? White actually played knight d3, avoiding this. Let's have a look. If knight takes e6, bishop takes e6, black is really actually threatening now things like rook h8 and bishop f4 to come into e3. It's pretty vicious, this position. Say b4, bishop f4, rook e1, rook takes b4, because there's also this b file is dangerous. This kind of position is not very good for white at all. There are various attacking options like this. So white wanted to avoid this. I mean, the attack could rage on like this. So white retreated that knight here after bishop c7, retreating the knight to d3. Didn't really help. g4, the attack is crashing through surely. F takes, rook g6. Look at the bishops, the raking bishops against white's king. g4 very vulnerable. Crushing. White resigned here. If knight f2, there's also that b file now, rook takes b2, with the threat of rook takes, and that's pretty devastating after taking on g4. So pretty crushing stuff there. So that last move, rook g6, white had enough here. If you look at this position, all of black's pieces are really operational here and in the attack. And you look at the start position where, you know, that knight, Magnus solved all his positional issues here. That knight on f5 was just solved tactically with g6. Very logical move. And amazing how the black pieces just all became liberated. This next example is against Milos Pavlovic, 2494, played in the Reykjavik Open in March, 11th of March 2006. White had just played in this position. Now bishop takes f6, and Magnus plays maybe an unexpected move here. He played actually the move bishop takes g2. So desperado move. If he had just routinely taken on f6, then queen takes f3, and white has some compensation here. King here, queen e2, and white might be looking forward to things like bishop d5, a nasty pin, etc. But yeah, with Magnus's move, he's piercing white's king safety. Now, if white takes on g7, then that's big trouble. Bishop takes hits the queen. King takes, then we can play rook g8. That's pretty horrible for white. So, okay, white took on g2, and now we have g takes. And now, white perhaps was relying on this pin. Queen takes b5, and it looks as though bishop d5 is going to be really nasty, or bishop a4 for this pin. But a really, really elegant move here from black, sorting this out. If I give you 5 seconds, what would you play here with black? Okay, king e7. So it frees the queen to move with check to g8 potentially, or rook g8 check, which might be useful with leaving the queen on that diagonal potentially. We see king h2, knight e5, now with the queen actually eyeing e4, f4, and in fact here another brilliant move from Magnus was played. What would you play in this position? If I give you 5 seconds. Okay, he plays queen takes e4. Queen takes e4. White plays f takes e5. And now we have rook g8, this fantastic coordination of the queen and the rook. E takes f6 was played here. King f8. There seems to be no way for white to exploit black's king in this particular position. White has to defend g2 somehow. He plays rook f2. But now we see d3. Black is threatening with this. Not particularly this move immediately, but more urgently, black is threatening things like queen g6, queen e3, queen e1, or queen h4. If he had played queen g6, say immediately, then white would have a resource here actually to defend a little bit with queen f1. So Magnus's move actually shuts down that defensive resource possibility by playing this magnificent move d3. Magnus the Magnificent. So d3 shutting down queen f1 now actually makes these threats a lot more critical and effective. We see queen h5, queen trying to defend like that. Rook g6. Now the bishop is still attacking that rook here. If bishop takes f2 had been played, queen takes f7, yes, white was threatening the mate in one there. So rook g6, queen f3 offering that rook. Well, it can't be taken because the queen's being attacked. So we have the check first, king h1. And now the rook could actually just be taken here, but Magnus plays even stronger move, check here. Rook f1. And now a really crushing move. Can you spot it? Rook g1 check. So if takes, queen takes g1 mate. King h2 check. Queen f4. And now just winning an entire rook with rook takes f1. Queen takes e5, d takes. Knight d2, so the exchange up, and now winning the d2 knight. What a total disaster for white. White just played this desperately, and here apparently the game ended right here. What a game. So yeah, starting from this bishop takes f6. Apparently, in theory, white's has played queen takes f3 before. That might be a little bit of a safer move. The engine is suggesting actually queen takes or g takes as an alternative to what was played. So for example here, where black is still slightly better. So what a game there. This next example, Hisham Hamdoushi 2575 playing Magnus Carlsen at the Reykjavik Open, and white here is exploiting the pin with queen takes d5 to get some material back. Magnus plays now a fantastic move. Can you spot it? Knight takes h3, so the queen and the rook coordinating on f2. If takes, then queen takes f2 is actually a mate in 5 after check, 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 and this will be a mate in 5, so it cannot be taken to allow this coordination of the queen and the rook, as you might expect. We have king h2, knight f4 check, king g1. So what's happened here? We have now slightly compromised king safety. We have queen g4 now. Immediate threat, queen takes g2, mating. Perhaps white's best includes rook takes f4 here. That might be the best move apparently, to give up the exchange. White played rook c4, and the unfortunate thing with this is now rook e8 is pretty crushing, threatening simply rook e1. White resigned here, in fact. If the queen drops back, then knight e2 check is winning, because then we take this loose rook on c4. And you might think, well, how else to defend? Say rook e3, then knight takes d5. We've got to keep the pin on the queen. Yeah, that's why rook takes f4. Another move, g3, might be wondering. Knight h3 check. This is pretty crushing. Here, rook takes f2. Queen takes g3, this would be devastating. So yeah, crushing tactics in this position after this queen takes d5, this knight takes h3, and then this queen g4. Really crushing tactics from Magnus. In this next example, Magnus playing black again is against Goran Todorovic, 2480. White has some material for the queen and just played here bishop b2. Now, in this position, Magnus has to justify his queen. He actually plays knight takes f2 after king takes check. So he's getting that knight. And black is now threatening bishop takes h3. So this had to be calculated well in advance to get this position. So is the queen a match for its counterparts here? So an interesting material distribution, but from an engine point of view, black is much better with that concrete bishop takes h3 threat. King h1 is played. And now Magnus takes time to play h5. We see bishop f6. And here the move bishop takes h3 was played. And white resigned. Let's see why. If takes, then we can take here. We can play a check and we can get onto a light square to win this bishop. So yeah. So what if black didn't play bishop f6? Was it a helpless position? Rook f1. Apparently this is still better for black, but there's still some play left in the position actually. It's only about a pawn advantage for black. So yeah, bishop f6 didn't help. Creating that loose piece. Yeah, loose pieces tend to drop off is an expression. I think coined by John Nunn is an expression, loose pieces drop off. So yeah, this didn't help this move bishop f6. Okay. This next example, Magnus is against Grandmaster Locke van Welle, 2655. He's actually playing with the white pieces here. Now Locke van Welle played the move f5. And it looks as though this is justified because black's got the pressure on d6. So what would you play here with white? If I give you 5 seconds. Okay, Magnus played e takes f6, not minding rook takes d6 here. Rook takes d6 was played, and now we have queen takes e4. White is threatening all sorts of things in this position. If he can get this e6 pawn, it's going to be very dangerous for the king. So even the move like rook 81 to try and get e6 is very dangerous. Black tried bishop b7. We have bishop takes, queen takes, and now rook 81. The queen dare not move away from e6 here. If queen c7 this wasn't played, in the game knight d8 was played, but if queen c7, check, here is necessary, as if here, rook d7 is crushing, with fg7 coming up. So queen f7 would be necessary. And white would be winning like this, taking, and rook d7, and being the exchange up, and 2 pawns up as well. So we see here knight d8 being played instead, and a really incisive move now. Well, a desperado could have been played as well. That would be a good move to then take the queen, and the material would be in white's favour actually in a particular position. Magnus played f7 check, so the knight's overloaded. It can't take here because queen takes b7. So the king took, but now we see queen takes h7. So with the queen still attacked here, but the queen is in an unpleasant spot here for the black king. After queen c6, this has to be attended to. We see rook f2, but white is now threatening f5. We see queen e4, f5, e5, Now rook fd2, dual purpose, defensive, but now attacking, coming to d7, defending d7, but now check, king e7. Now a fantastic mega tactic in this position to create really a loose piece by force. Can you spot it? If I give you 5 seconds. How would you put away Grandmaster Locke Van Welly from this position? How would you put the boot in to Van Welly? Rook d7 check was played and Van Welly resigned. If his king moves, then queen g7 is going to be mating. And if the bishop takes, then we've got a loose piece being created on e4, and loose pieces tend to drop off. f6 check, winning the queen. So yeah, rook d7 crushing. Magnus was already a tactical monster at the age of 16, and here in this next example, again against Van Welly. This is the Van Welly Carlsen match played in the Netherlands in May, 1st of May 2006. Black played the move h5, and guess what Magnus played? Okay, a very dangerous looking move, knight takes e6. Perhaps it was best to take care, that's what the engine indicates, but this position doesn't look very appealing. Surely Black has some issues to address, like knight d5, rook c4, so he didn't go in for that. Black played actually queen takes c3, desperado, before trying to recapture the queen here. We see Magnus just taking that after hg. He's winning the exchange, knight c7 check, and he's better here after winning the exchange, and he's winning the a6 pawn. The game continued actually a little bit longer. e5, we see Magnus's technique, material up. The threat there was included like bishop b6 check there, so Black parried that. Here now, White is resting bishop b7 with this pin. Rook ea1, threatening this sort of thing to maybe support rook c6, etc. So d5, rook here, bishop d6, c4, opening up that diagonal, wanting to play bishop b7. The king can't use c7 with Magnus's rook a7. C takes d5, c4, rook takes e3, another exchange sack from Black, or rather in a lost position. Rook a3, so 2 exchanges down. But hold on, yeah, it's not quite 2 exchanges down. Black's 4 pieces here against the 3, they're not very good. White has all these pawns. In fact, Magnus plays rook takes b6 now, because after knight takes, check, he's winning even more pawns with rook takes f7. We see knight takes c4, e4. White's still better. Rook f1. But actually the engine here is only it's only a small advantage now. Something's actually happened here. Only a small advantage. But after knight f6, we have this as a winning result for Magnus. Maybe Black had run out of time here. It seems from an engine point of view this is about equal. So something happened in that sequence. It looked as though White had a crushing position. White had a big advantage here up to a point. Maybe an inaccuracy had slept in. e5 strong move, more than a pawn advantage from an engine point of view. Here the move c4 was a bit better. Here the idea of rook to a6 was apparently really strong. Magnus played to a7. If he had played here, then he's threatening rook c6, and if here, bishop f4 check. This apparently is really strong, this position, to play for this rook c6. So the way Magnus had played it, maybe he let Van Wely off a little bit here, so there's some material for black, and actually it's not so clear cut. Bishop takes d5, apparently a little bit stronger than, or about the same as what was played. But here, okay, c4 was played. In fact, the engine gives rook a6 as an idea to play for d6. After this c4, it seems quite interesting now what happened here. Bishop b6 apparently is about equal. This one should have been better for white if the absolute correct continuation had been played. Let's have a look. Rook takes, knight takes, check. In this position, apparently rook a5 would have secured white +2, with c5 coming up with these central pawns rolling through. There's no knight takes c4 because of the check here. So apparently Magnus missed an important move here to maximise his advantage. So it slipped a bit with this check. Although he won f7, this position, black's got a nice blockade on e5. So I believe it was actually a time win in the end. But what a scary game for black to play and endure against Magnus Carlsen. So let's have a look at another example. This one is against Anders Hobber. Actually, in 1926, Magnus was still playing some relatively weak players. This was in the Midnight Sun Chess Challenge, Tromsø, Norway. So knight f6 was played. Guess what white plays here? Okay, Magnus plays bishop takes b7. Loose pieces being created by force. Loose pieces drop off, check, taking the loose piece. And the game continued a little bit. So Magnus had to win this after. And he won it in endgame, really. Continual pressure. Simplified the ending. And his king started marching. And here black resigned here. It's just going to get worse for black. King a6 is on the cards, etc. This next example, Magnus is playing white against Kjetil A. Lee, 2536. His opponents played knight g5. So black is threatening knight takes e4, forking quite a lot of pieces here. What does Magnus play in this position? If I give you 5 seconds, starting from now. Okay, rook takes f7 was played. Fantastic move. If knight takes f7, that wasn't played, but if knight takes, then we would have check here. This is really crushing. So if king g7, we have taking, and it's devastation. We take here. And then actually after this we can play this check to get the bishop off trouble. If g5 queen f6 is mating, and it's not so good for king h5. Let's just show that. Queen f6, queen g5, and if king h5, queen takes, queen d7 check, bishop g5, queen d6, bishop e6. This is going to be winning for white. Yeah, hopeless. White's bishop up after taking. So yeah, knight takes f7. We saw this king g7, and if king h8, then again knight takes e8 here. It's just hopeless. We can throw in the check now, and it's actually a mate in 3 in this position, so that doesn't really help black either. Mate. So yeah, whatever way this is cut, it looks as though it's a disaster. Black played rook takes c2, trying to get the bishop off this diagonal. Looks like a cunning move. But now, knight e7 check was played. Very tactical position indeed. In the game, king h8 was played, allowing bishop e5 checkmate. But it is a forced mate anyway. If rook takes e7, then check from the bishop, discover check from the bishop, is mating, like this. Queen f7, bishop e5, and we can mate. So yeah, this is a crushing refutation of knight g5. Rook takes f7. Crushing. Doesn't seem to be anything black can do here. Wow. Now, against arch rival in the Norway scene, Simon Ajtin, who was later to become Magnus's coach. Here, Ajtin, under intense pressure, plays rook b7. And Magnus forces a loose piece here. Guess what he plays? Okay, knight takes f7. This queen's a bit overloaded. The queen takes. And instead of immediately playing queen takes a5, that was actually left there, believe it or not. Bishop takes c5. What is going on here? Can Magnus afford to leave this here? Cannot the queen go back? Well, in the game, king b8 was played. If the queen tries to flee back to protect her knight on a5, black falls to bits. f7 is the start of wreckage here. Queen takes e6. Bishop d6. We're going to win the exchange, and then we're going to win the knight on d5, if nothing else. Crushing. So what started as just winning a5 is now something even worse. After queen c7, queen takes e6. So black tried king b8. Queen takes a5, hitting the rook. The rook moves. Rook c4, threatening bishop d6 check. Now, queen e8. Here, Magnus played queen a6. There might have been a stronger move there, apparently, in rook takes and bishop d6 check. So Magnus is still human after all. He's not playing the top moves in the position from an engine point of view, but this is still a very strong move. Queen a6, threatening things like bishop takes a7. We see knight b6, rook takes c3, king a8, and now bishop takes b6 here was played, and black resigned. If he takes here, then rook takes c8, easily winning. If he takes here, then we have rook d8 check, winning the queen. There's no back row issue for the king. Just to see that engine tactic mentioned, instead of queen a6, by the way, just for those theoretically interested, it went like this: rook takes d5, e takes, check. Here, rook takes, queen takes d5. This position apparently is +7 for white. White is threatening a5, e6. So even though the exchange down, this is helpless. Say here, e6, check, e7. This is just a helpless position for black. Yeah, it was a crushing position by that stage. And here is another part of the Norwegian playoff of that year. Simon Ajtin playing white against Magnus Carlsen. Magnus Carlsen is pressing with his bishops against white's king. The rooks are beautifully centralized. What a harmonious position this is. The pawns trying to wreak havoc, breaking through the lines, opening the lines. White looks to be already devastated here. White tried knight e4. It looks pretty desperate. What does Magnus play in this position, which is already crushing? If I give you 5 seconds. Okay, Magnus plays rook takes e4. If f takes, then we've got all sorts of strong moves, but the strongest might actually be b3, because we've got this sneaky idea of queen takes a3 check coming up. So here we can play queen takes a3 with a mate in 2. So yeah, that looks pretty crushing. White tried queen takes e4, and now we have b takes actually being played. On b3 here, in fact, it seems white, this backfires with bishop c3 in this particular position. This backfires, and white's actually better here. Believe it or not, this back row issue is pretty painful and annoying. So some precision needed there. If we look at this other variation, just for those interested, here, I don't think, sorry, this position the queen was attacked, that's the difference. So yeah, so we have this position, and it seems, yeah, b takes a3 looks pretty crushing, but actually bishop d3 was played, and we see black in big trouble, sorry, white in big trouble, threatening all sorts of things. If the queen flees here, then bishop takes b2 is pretty quick for a mate with a check here, and b3, this is mating white. There's no way to stop the mates really. So yeah, here after bishop d3 we see rook c1 from Zee NED, and black now just plays queen takes c1. He takes on e4. Now he takes on a3. This is clear advantage to black. This position here. Black is immediately threatening rook b8. We see h4 being played. h5. Black could even wait. On any king a2 here, the problem is that a takes b is still possible because of rook d2. So white played rook f1, bishop e5, rook g1, no, f6, just keeping the torture. And in fact, white resigned here. There's really nothing he can do. If king b8, king b1, then rook b8, this sort of position is pretty hopeless. This position here, this ending is pretty hopeless. It's trivially winning the king and pawn ending. We've got the outside pass pawn as well. So yeah, pretty crushing stuff there. So that helped win the Norwegian Championship that year in the playoff. Now another final example, again from the playoff actually against him and Ashton. Magnus playing white displayed queen d5, which crudely looks at f7, but it's difficult for black to do anything about this. Black tried queen f6. Guess what Magnus plays here? If I give you 5 seconds. So against poor Simon Ashton. Knight takes e5. Yes, there's a loose rook on a8. If queen takes, that wasn't played. Knight takes was actually played. If queen takes, and we take here, then we take here, and we're just miles better. So that's a big advantage for white. So in the game, we see actually knight takes offering the rook. And the game continues a little bit. Bishop e3. Threatening bishop c5 check. Check. And yes, the game continues a little bit. Might have been a blitz game, this one. Knight d3 check, as though there might be something going on here. But actually the bishop's holding that, so it's just about the bishop actually now. So white's just hugely material up. f3. Knight d2. Queen e3, consolidating the big material advantage. A rook up. Yes. Black playing on a tiny bit more, maybe than he should have. A takes, knight b3, and after knight d4, Queen c5, King h1, Black resigned here. So yes, what can we see from these examples that you might not have seen before? Well, Magnus was over 2650, so pretty decent rating, and yeah, he was starting to beat more and more grandmasters this year. Fantastic year for Magnus Carlsen overall in his development. Comments or questions on YouTube? Thanks very much.